Hello. Today begins Hispanic Heritage Month, a time of celebration and cultural enrichment. School board member Maria Salamanca joins me. She represents District 2. Also here with us is Nancy Alvarez. Welcome, ladies. It's so nice to have you.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. This is so important for the community. They're excited.
I think they are.
Yeah. So you both know how near and dear it is to my heart as well. I have shared that I'm a proud Cuban mom of 2 OCPS students. That's really why I'm here, is to represent the Latina moms, right, for Hispanic Heritage Month. So last year I was so excited to MC the district's big Hispanic Heritage Month celebration. It was awesome. This year I'm happy to be sitting here with you guys to have, I think, an important conversation.
Yes, we really have a beautiful, diverse population in Orange County Public Schools. In fact, we now have 56%. That's all, 56% of our population that's Hispanic. And it keeps growing year over year. So, Board Member Salamanca, you are a proud OCPS graduate. Would you tell us a little bit about your school experience?
Yes, I moved here with my family when I was in first grade from Colombia, and I attended 6 different OCPS schools during my time here, 11 years in the district. My family had just moved, so I know what it's like. So many of our families that are navigating entering a new school district, a new country, and how much they rely on our education to figure out how to be contributors to our community. So it's exciting to now represent them.
Yeah, and it can be so overwhelming. So to have you advocating and representing not only District 2, but all of our Hispanic families is such an honor. So Nancy, now why don't you tell us a little bit about your school experience?
Oh, my school experience. So I'm first generation of my family in this country, and I was raised with Cuban parents who hadn't really mastered English and didn't really understand all the things that were happening, at my school. And I always say that, one of the reasons I joined the PTA at our school, and I became PTA president eventually at my school, is because when I was little, my mom used to say, "Piti qué?" Like, what is that? There was this disconnect, right, between all the things that were happening at school and what my mom and dad understood or even trusted, right? Because there's always a trust issue there, and that's not, to their fault. It just wasn't what their experience was as children. So I'm just struck by how far we've come, right? And how many resources are available now to families like ours, right? Who are afraid and are not trusting of the system and not familiar with it. I think that you can walk into just about any school in Orange County and someone will be able to come and assist you in Spanish. What a gift, right? That's so huge, and it's so different than it was when, I was little and my parents were navigating me through school.
Yeah, I agree. It is very overwhelming, and to be able to feel some level of comfort because there is someone that can communicate with you is huge. And so I concur that they do have individuals at schools, almost every school, that not only speak Spanish, but for those who maybe Spanish isn't their second or first language, we do have a language line so anyone can come in and feel a level of comfort that we can communicate.
I think it's also important to point out that these families, they just got here. I always say, give them a minute. Just give them a minute. I think everyone intends to learn English and learn our culture and learn the systems, but they're in a transition, and it's a huge transition. It's so important for classmates and staff to understand that and just give people some grace and assist them as they're assimilating to all things in this country.
One of the things I tell my schools always is how much of sometimes the Latino culture is to trust your schools, drop off the kid, and I go back and I'm working every day and I pick them up at the end of the day. And so bringing that involvement from the parents is not that sometimes parents are not interested in being involved, they're not used to, because many of our countries, parents are not as involved, and it's just, there is not such a thing as a PTA where that's the role and experience.
BTK.
BTK, yeah. And it's not because of lack of wanting to be very engaged, it's just not what we're used to.
Right.
So Dr. Vasquez, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience in school?
So mine is a little bit of a combo of the two of yours. I started school and did not speak a lick of English, and I remember my first day vividly. I was terrified. I was sitting on steps just crying because I didn't understand anyone around me. And my parents both worked two jobs, and so they just dropped me off. And that the teacher was just critical. Mrs. Alvarez just made me feel.
No. Her name was Mrs.
Yes, her
Alvarez.
name was Mrs. Alvarez. You know what? I didn't think about that. Maybe there's a connection. But she just made me feel at ease. She sat me by a little girl that did speak English and Spanish, and so I was able to communicate with her. They didn't have bilingual programs at that time, and so it was full immersion, and it was very, very scary, and very much so what you were saying. My parents trusted that the school was going to take care of me, and it was also very clear that I needed to behave, I needed to really focus on school, and as I grew up, that didn't change. And so my parents did become more acclimated, they did understand the system, so they did become more involved. My mom would, come when there were events in the evening, and I was really proud that she felt like she was able to come like some of the other parents. And I look at what we have now and all of the resources and all of the supports and all of the opportunities for our families to be true partners in their child's education. And it just brings a huge smile to my face.
You really can feel the difference when you walk into our schools and you do have the Latinos greeting you and answering a lot of your questions, which was not the case either for myself. But I'm super interested on knowing a bit more about what this month-long celebration means to both of you.
So for me, it really is bringing me back to who I am and celebrating the difference. When I was in school, I did feel different, and I didn't feel like celebrating because I wanted to be like everybody else. I didn't want to stand out. And I think that mindset has changed. And so we look at diversity as a huge asset. And so being able to highlight accomplishments, to highlight the culture, what makes our Hispanic culture so special, is heartwarming, and that's what this month really means to me.
I think for me, I'm raising two kids, and I'm sort of that middle generation, right? Because my parents, their grandparents are from Cuba. I'm, here and they're here, right? So I'm the one trying to continue to instill those values and the traditions and the language and the music and the food, and it's a constant thing. So I always say every month is Hispanic Heritage Month in my house because I'm always trying, right? But then, we have this month where everyone else stops, right? And pauses and recognizes our month, as I tell my kids, and so it sparks conversation at school. We have these school projects that we're working on. And I tell my kids, I'm like, tell them that you're half Cuban, like celebrate it when you're having conversations about Hispanic Heritage Month. Participate. Tell them que tus abuelos nada más hablan español. Your grandparents only speak Spanish. And so, I think that's what it does. It sparks conversation, and it forces us to sort of pause and reflect and celebrate, and it's so important.
And you brought up a good point about keeping those traditions alive, and so much of our world has changed since I grew up. My grandparents lived very close by. We saw them a few times a week. Saturday dinner was always at Abuela and Abuelo's house. And when I look at our own family, and we are spread apart, and so trying to keep those traditions alive and making sure that our grandchildren understand who we are and our history and our heritage is that much more important.
And speaking of events, I know that there's a lot events happening across the district. Different schools have events, and the PTA puts on events. And I remember myself as well one of the first like kind of core memories of first grade was when it was, and I remember if it was Hispanic Heritage Month or Multicultural Month, but we were kind of, they were told us, bring us food or something that is representative of your culture. And it was the first time that I was like really excited to share, oh, I'm Colombian, like here I'm gonna bring some empanadas. And they're different than Venezuelan empanadas. And it was the first time I felt like my school was really seeing, and I know I encourage all of my schools in my district to have events like this that really bring in the families and the students and that make them proud of who they are and where they come from.
Yeah.
But I know that there is a list that's gonna be online on the OCPS website of the ongoing events throughout the month. And we will keep those updated.
Yes, and I think one of the things that we especially want to remind our families is that we're going to highlight resources and opportunities for them to be engaged and be able to access resources so that they really can be true partners. And I love that we're going to be doing that, really being very deliberate.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that our families who are Hispanic can become more involved, as well as everyone in our community understanding and recognizing what Hispanic Heritage Month is all about.
Yeah, and I would urge parents, if any parents see this video, right, and watch this conversation, to have the conversation with their kids and let their kids know that if there's somebody in their classroom who they heard just moved from Venezuela or just moved from Puerto Rico or they just got here from wherever, encourage their kids to go over to that child and introduce themselves and say hi and hey, where are you from? Tell me about your country. It'll make a world of difference to that child. It'll have a huge impact. And then your own child is going to learn a lot, right? And your own child could be impacted by this kid who just moved here, like I said, from another country, another culture, another language. So I think this month is important for parents, again, who may be watching this to spark that conversation at home and encourage their kids to look around their classroom and reach out.
Great point. Hispanic Heritage Month begins today through October 15th. I look forward to seeing so many beautiful activities that I know will be happening all month long in our schools across the district. Thank you all for watching.